Hey team, welcome to another video for Building Better Baseball. And this is a small space drills and activities training that I did for a coaching clinic that I was a part of. And now I want to bring it to you as my YouTube audience to show you all the love that I feel for your support. So this is a training that is jam-packed with tons of drills for all sorts of parts of the game. And this is specifically for small spaces and kind of rainy days and stuff like that. So I hope you enjoy this training. And before we get started, as always, if you look down in the description, grab your free guide. I made tons of them down there for free, and I made them just for you. So this is part one, and part one has to do with coaches planning for small space activities. Hey team, welcome to this free training for indoor and small space activities for the off season and even rainy days. So all of these activities that are in this training, you can use for indoor spaces like a gym or an indoor baseball facility. You can use for rainy days whenever you can't have practice outside in your inside space. And also you can use all these activities outside as well. So there's a lot of different uses for all these different activities. So I'm really excited to bring you this free training. And before we get started, I want to thank you for being a subscriber. So let's get started. So we'll first talk about some things to think about when you're inside a small space like a gym or an inside baseball facility. Normally, limited space also means limited time because the space is rented. So in these situations, whenever you have an indoor baseball facility or a gym or a space that's rented, usually there's multiple teams or multiple organizations renting this space. So not only do you have limited space, but you also have limited time. So that's something to think about. Small space allows for more standing around. Because there is a small space, there's not enough space for everyone to be doing something. Therefore, everybody is compacted into this small space, which allows for less activities to do, which means that there's more standing around. So that's something that when we plan our practices for indoor facilities and off-season workouts, we have to think about how to keep everybody moving at all times. The top of your priority list should be figuring out how to maximize activity during the limited time. So that's what we just said, right? So we really have to try to avoid all the standing around. So another thing to think about is your assistant coaches. In the off season, they may be doing other things. Their kids may be playing other sports. They may have other jobs in the off season. So they may not be available for these winter workouts. I know when I was coaching, I was pretty much there the entire time by myself. I rarely had people helping. Sometimes the parents stepped in, but I was mostly there by myself. So I had to plan my practices accordingly. So make sure you get in contact with your assistant coaches and plan your practices based on what kind of help you'll have. Your two best options for these indoor facilities. You can have your team participate in the same drills simultaneously. All players will have a partner or a group, and they'll all be practicing the same skill at once. So basically, you'll introduce the skill to the team as a whole, and they will group off or partner off, and they'll all be practicing the same thing at the same time. So you'll be walking around and coaching them as each group is going through the skill. Or you can make stations and have a different skill or drill at each station. I've used both of these methods, and both of them maximize activity and participation in the limited time and the limited space. My favorite is the stations. I love stations. I think they work on everything you want to work on, and everybody is active, and they're all practicing different skills, and you can go through and coach different areas and different skills, and you just rotate them through the centers. That's my favorite way to go about it, but I have done both, and they both work very well in the small space. Here are some thoughts when you're planning your practices. Make sure you talk with your team about making each other better. You won't be able to watch everyone all the time. So in these small spaces, especially if you're by yourself, you won't be able to go around and coach everybody and help everybody. So it's really important to talk to your players about making each other better. They are responsible for making their teammates better. That's how the whole team gets better, and that's how you all improve, is by each player trying to make each other better. Because if they're just running around and kind of carrying on during the stations and they're not really helping each other out, they're supposed to be soft tossing, but their soft tosses are really weak and the hitter isn't able to get quality swings, that's something that needs to be fixed, especially when we're doing centers in this small space. So I think that's something important that you should talk to your team about. Do your best to have consistency, basically all offense or all defense, or the first half offense and the second half defense. So this is like the practice. Have one day full of offensive practice, and then the next day all defensive practice, or just have like one switch from the first half is offense and the second half is defense. It takes time to switch from offense to defense and back. So if you think about it, if the players are constantly putting their helmets on and the batting gloves and the bat, and then they have to switch and take everything off and get their glove, and then they have to switch back, that takes a lot of time, and that wastes a lot of time when you have a limited amount of time. So that's something to think about when you plan your practices. Try to get the transition time down to seconds and maybe a minute. One thing I love doing, especially when I do stations, is I count down to the switching time. I say, okay, you have 3 minutes. Okay, now 1 minute. All right, we're switching in 30 seconds. This allows the players time to plan to switch, and they get ready for the switch. So when it's time to switch, they have already cleaned up their center and they're ready to go to the next one, rather than going all the way up to the switch time and then telling them, okay, time to switch, time to rotate. That's when they're all cleaning up all the balls and everything like that, and it wastes a lot of time because they didn't know that they were going to switch. So countdown to switches, that saves a lot of time because the players are aware of when they need to switch and when they need to clean up their center and move on to the next center. Stations. Stay at one station and instruct that skill. So this is something that I did every single practice whenever I did stations, and especially when I was by myself. If you try to go to every center and every station and try to instruct at every station, you risk not getting to everybody during that practice. And every player on your team deserves your coaching. They're putting in the same time as everybody else, so they deserve your time just like everybody else. My suggestion and what I did is pick a center and have everybody rotate through that center. That way, everybody gets the same amount of coaching from you, and you don't have to worry about going through every center and worrying about, oh, did I see him? Did I see him? Did I coach him? You're at one center, everybody rotates through, and you are there instructing at that center. Me personally, I always did the tee. I was always at the tee, and I always worked with every player at the tee when they rotated through, and I relied on my players to get each other better at all of the other stations. So that's something you can think about. So what we're going to cover in this training. The rest of the training will have small space drills to try out. We'll have offensive drills, we'll have defensive drills, we'll have base running, and we'll have some extra ideas at the end. All of these ideas are things anyone can do with little amount of equipment. So what I tried to do in this training is I tried to use the least amount of equipment as possible, because I know that everybody has different circumstances and different situations, and not everybody has all the crazy equipment that some people have. And I tried to make these activities stuff that you can take with you either on rainy days or even outside, so you can use them in other spaces rather than just indoor spaces. So remember, you can do these drills in stations, or your team can do one at the same time with a partner or a group.